Moderator of Meet the Press, Kristen Welker, just sat down exclusively with French President Emmanuel Macron just moments ago following those lengthy peace talks at the White House today. She pressed him on that hot mic moment with President Trump that we saw earlier and whether a ceasefire needs to be reached to hold the trilateral meeting and the role French and American troops could play in the effort to maintain peace. Take a listen.
President Trump was overheard on a microphone talking to you, and he said, quote, "I think he wants to make a deal," meaning Putin. "I think he wants to make a deal for me." You understand that? As crazy as it sounds. What went through your head when he said that to you?
I think if, at the end of the day, if we have a deal which is compliant with this long-standing and robust peace, this is a great news. And your president, indeed, is very confident about the capacity he has to get this deal done, which is a good news for all of us and can break this, I would say, this daily killings, which are the responsibility of the Russian aggressor. So I think it's a great news. My point, and this is why we've worked so hard during the past few months, and we need this convergence, is to be sure that this deal is not detrimental to Ukraine and Europe. And all of us, we want a deal and we want a peace deal. But we want to make sure that this peace, and so this deal, will be something which will allow the Ukrainians to recover the country and live in peace, to be sure the day after this peace deal that they will have sufficient deterrence power not to be attacked again, and to be sure for the Europeans that they will live in peace and security. So this is the nature of the peace, which will be now the core of our work. But I think this is a great news, and indeed your president is very confident about his capacity to get this deal done with President Putin, and it's great.
Let's talk about the issues. You were very firm. You still think a ceasefire is necessary. President Trump, on his way to Alaska, said that he wanted there to be a ceasefire agreement. Otherwise, he said there would be very severe consequences. Do you think a ceasefire is still possible? I
do hope. Let's call it once again truce or ceasefire. But we have to stop the killings. First, for humanitarian reasons. Second, because if we want sincere, reasonable, comprehensive talks in order to build a peace, you cannot organize this discussion in the middle of the bombs. Look, today we were with President Zelensky. President Trump called President Putin at the end of our meeting, and we meet again right after this call. In the meantime, the Russian army organized a series of strikes on civilians in Ukraine. So it's impossible for an Ukrainian president and Ukrainian officials to have talks about peace as their country is being destroyed and as their civilians are being killed.
Let me ask you about the discussion over security guarantees.
Yes.
What exactly did you agree to as it relates to security guarantees? Does that mean European troops? And does that mean U.S. troops?
Look, I think for me, it's a very important progress of the past few days that your president expressed the clear commitment of the U.S. to be part of the security guarantees. It's brand new. And last February, when I took the responsibility to gather a series of European leaders with President Zelensky in Paris, and we followed up in London, and we created this coalition of the willing. And it was a reaction to the feeling we had that we could see a temptation to go to a rapid peace, but without any guarantee for Ukraine. And we know what it means. It was Georgia 2008, but it was as well Crimea 2014. And there is full certainty that if you make any peace deal without security guarantee, Russia will never respect its words, will never comply with its own commitments. So it's for us totally critical, and this is an essential part of any deal for Ukraine and for the Europeans. This is for our own security. So this is a very important progress of the past few days that the US now is willing to be part of this.
Kristen Welker joins us now live. Kristen, that was just a portion of that interview. You also spoke to President Macron about how optimistic he feels about a deal.
Tom, I did, and it was a really notable answer. President Macron saying that he is skeptical that President Putin actually wants peace. It was a very somber moment in the interview, and he said the process itself is important. It's significant that we move forward with this process. But you could hear his frustration in the fact that he hasn't agreed to a ceasefire deal, in the fact that the bombs are still dropping. And he also made the point that President Putin has not been able to actually claim a significant portion of land in recent months. And so he doesn't have the right to ask to keep all of the land that he's illegally claimed, and even more than that. He said, I don't think there should be swapping of land. He also said that this is not just about Ukraine's security, Tom. He said this is about the security of all of Europe, and he called it a credibility issue for the United States. And this was a significant takeaway from his interview, Tom. He said, look, if it doesn't appear as though there is being progress made in these upcoming talks between President Zelensky and President Putin, and then, of course, the trilateral that's expected to happen after that, he says President Trump should move to impose sanctions and tariffs and really lower the hammer on President Putin. It was a very powerful message from the French president, who also reaffirmed their commitment to the security of Ukraine and that security agreement that you heard him there talk about without giving all of the details away. It's clear some of those details are still very much coming together. But for the French president, this is a matter of Ukraine's security and the security of everyone on the European continent, Tom.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.